Story number 1. The Legend of the Christmas Ghost Train. Every small town has its legends, stories passed down through generations that become part of the community's fabric. In my hometown of Evergreen Falls, nestled deep in the heart of rural England, one story stood out above the rest: the legend of the Christmas Ghost Train. As a child, I would sit by the fireplace, mesmerized by my grandfather's tales of the spectral locomotive that appeared only on Christmas Eve, haunting the abandoned tracks of the old Midland Railway. I never believed in ghosts or supernatural phenomena. Rationality and logic were my guiding principles, especially as I grew older and pursued a career in engineering. However, the more I heard about the ghost train, the more it lingered in the back of my mind, an inexplicable curiosity I couldn't quite dismiss. It was December 24th, 2024, when Evergreen Falls was hit by an unprecedented snowstorm, the kind that blankets the world in silence, muffling even the fiercest winds. Roads were impassable, and power outages were widespread. My family and I were holed up in our old Victorian home, the same house my grandfather had lived in, now filled with memories and the warmth of Christmas decorations. As midnight approached, the storm outside intensified, the wind howling like restless spirits. The power flickered, casting eerie shadows across the rooms. We gathered in the living room, sharing stories and sipping hot cocoa to stave off the chill. It was then that my father mentioned the ghost train, his voice a mix of nostalgia and unease. Grandpa used to say that on the coldest Christmas Eves, the ghost train rides again, searching for its lost passengers. He said, "Eyes distant. They say if you listen closely, you can hear the whistle and the clatter of wheels on tracks, even when there's no train in sight." I laughed it off, attributing it to old man's imagination. But as the clock struck 12, a strange stillness settled over the house. The storm seemed to pause, the wind's roar fading into a profound silence. It was as if the world held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, a faint, rhythmic clatter echoed through the house, growing louder by the second. It was unmistakable, the sound of a train, its whistle piercing the silence. My heart raced as I glanced around, trying to locate the source of the noise. The sound seemed to emanate from outside, from the direction of the old railway tracks that lay abandoned on the outskirts of town. "Did you hear that?" my sister, Emily, whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Probably just the wind," I replied, though my voice wavered. But as the clatter persisted, I knew it was more than just the storm's aftermath. It was the ghost train, as my father had described. Curiosity overpowered my skepticism. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the back door, Emily following close behind. The cold night air bit at my cheeks, and the snow swirled around us like spectral dancers. As we stepped outside, the ghostly sound of the train grew louder, guiding us towards the deserted tracks. There, bathed in the pale light of the moon, stood the ghost train. Its locomotive was an antique marvel, with steam billowing from its stack and headlights glowing with an otherworldly light. The carriages, though aged, appeared immaculate, their windows shimmering as if filled with ghostly passengers. Frozen in awe, we watched as the train slowly moved along the tracks, its wheels clicking rhythmically on the frozen rails. The whistle blew, a mournful sound that sent shivers down my spine. Inside the train, vague silhouettes could be seen, fleeting glimpses of faces staring out the windows with hollow eyes. "Should we follow it?" Emily asked, her voice barely audible. A sense of dread settled over me, but the pull of the unknown was irresistible. I nodded, and we began to walk alongside the tracks, the ghost train leading us deeper into the night. The snowstorm had lost its fury, replaced by an eerie calm that enveloped the deserted landscape. As we walked, the train seemed to glide effortlessly over the snow, its presence both captivating and terrifying. The air grew colder, and a thick mist enveloped us, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. The whispers of the passengers echoed around us, their voices blending with the sound of the train. "Help us find peace," the whispers seemed to plead. We continued walking, driven by a mix of fear and determination, until we reached an old bridge that spanned a frozen river. The ghost train approached, slowing its pace until it stopped just short of the bridge. The headlights dimmed, casting long shadows across the ice. Suddenly, the spectral passengers became more distinct. Their translucent forms stood at the windows, gazing out into the night with sorrowful expressions. It was as if they were waiting for something, their eternal vigil unending. Before we could react, the train began to fade, the mist swallowing it whole. The whispers grew louder, surrounding us with their mournful cries. I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder, turning me around to face a ghostly figure, a woman with tear-streaked cheeks and hollow eyes. "Why do you follow us?" she whispered, her voice echoing in my mind. "I wanted to help," I replied, my voice trembling. "What can we do?" She pointed towards the bridge, her finger wavering. "There lies the key. Only then can we find peace." Determined to assist these restless spirits, we followed her towards the center of the bridge. The frozen river below reflected the ghostly light, creating a hauntingly beautiful yet unsettling scene. As we reached the midpoint, I noticed something glinting beneath the ice. A small, ornate box. Carefully, I reached down and retrieved it, feeling the weight of its significance. Opening the box, I found an old locket containing a faded photograph of the Johnson family, the same family my grandfather had once mentioned in his stories. The locket also held a single, dried rose, a symbol of lost love and tragic fate. "I think this belonged to them," I murmured, showing it to Emily. "Maybe it holds the answer." As I held the locket, a sense of warmth enveloped me, a stark contrast to the icy cold surrounding us. The ghost train began to reappear, its presence now more serene. The spectral passengers watched us with gratitude, their sorrowful expressions softening. "Thank you," the woman whispered, her voice filled with relief. "Now we can move on." With that, the ghost train began to fade once more, the locket's warmth sealing the spirit's fate. The whispers ceased, replaced by a profound silence that settled over the bridge. The mist lifted, revealing a clear, starry night, unmarred by the storm's fury. We stood there for a moment, the weight of the night's events sinking in. The ghost train had vanished, leaving behind a sense of closure and peace. The locket remained in my hand, a tangible reminder of the spirits we had helped to release from their eternal vigil. As we made our way back home, the first light of dawn began to break through the horizon, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold. The legend of the Christmas ghost train had been more than just a story. It had been a plea for help, a cry for peace that we had answered. In the days that followed, Evergreen Falls returned to its peaceful rhythm, the memory of the ghost train lingering only in whispered conversations and the occasional shiver down the spine of those who had witnessed it. The locket found its place on our mantelpiece. A symbol of the night we bridged the gap between the living and the dead, bringing closure to a haunting legend that had plagued our town for decades. The legend of the Christmas ghost train taught me that some stories are rooted in truth, that the echoes of the past can reach out to the present in ways we can scarcely comprehend. And every Christmas Eve thereafter, as the snow begins to fall and the night grows still, I can't help but glance towards the old railway tracks, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghost train once more, a reminder of the night we helped restless souls find their peace amidst the winter storm. Story number 2. The Murder of the Yule Lads. The winter of 1943 in Iceland was harsher than any I'd ever experienced. As a young detective in Reykjavik, I thought I had seen my fair share of grisly cases, but nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare that awaited in the heart of the Icelandic countryside. The case that would later be whispered about in hushed tones as the Murder of the Yule Lads began on a frigid Christmas Eve, when folklore and reality collided in the most terrifying way. I was assigned to investigate the disappearance of the Johnson family, a modest household living on the outskirts of Akureyri. The family consisted of Gurn, a kind-hearted mother, her husband, Einar, a diligent fisherman, and their two children, Anna and Bjorn. Their home, nestled among snow-covered pines, was the epitome of Icelandic tranquility, or so it seemed. On the evening of December 24th, a violent storm swept through the region, trapping the Johnson family indoors. When the storm finally subsided on Christmas morning, Gurn reported that her family had vanished without a trace. Initial searches yielded nothing but the howling wind and the oppressive silence of a house abandoned in haste. What disturbed me more than their disappearance was the eerie atmosphere that lingered in their home, as if the very walls held their breath. Upon entering the house, I was struck by the remnants of a chaotic struggle. Furniture was overturned, and personal belongings lay scattered across the floor. Yet, the most unsettling discovery was a series of strange trinkets and carvings that seemed out of place in the Johnson household. Among them were small wooden figurines resembling the Yule Lads, mischievous creatures from Icelandic folklore known for their pranks during the Christmas season. The Yule Lads, 12 in total, each with distinct personalities and traits, were traditionally seen as harmless, albeit mischievous, beings. However, the presence of these figurines in the Johnson home suggested something far more sinister. As I meticulously cataloged the items, a chill crept down my spine, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. It was as if the very essence of the Yule Lads had seeped into the house, their playful nature twisted into something malevolent. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the family's history and local legends. The Johnsons were well respected in their community, known for their generosity and kindness. There was no indication of familial strife or external threats. Yet, the carvings and figurines hinted at a connection to the Yule Lads that went beyond mere superstition. One night, as I pored over old manuscripts in the Reykjavik library, I stumbled upon a passage that sent shivers down my spine. It spoke of an ancient curse linked to the Yule Lads, a tale forgotten by time but still whispered among the oldest inhabitants. According to the legend, if the Yule Lads were angered or disrespected, they would seek retribution, their pranks turning deadly and their mischief escalating into uncontrollable horror. The more I read, the more I realized that the Johnson family's disappearance was not just a tragic loss but a manifestation of this dark folklore. The carvings in their home were more than decorative. They were offerings, attempts to appease the restless spirits of the Yule Lads. Yet, something had gone terribly wrong. My investigation took a supernatural turn when I interviewed an elderly neighbor, Sigrid, who had lived in Akureyri all her life. Her eyes, clouded with age, bore into mine with a mixture of fear and sorrow as she recounted her memories of the Yule Lads. "They are not just playful spirits, detective," she warned, her voice trembling. "Some of them have grown bitter over the years, twisted by the dark deeds they've witnessed. They hunger for recognition, for respect. If ignored or scorned, their mischief turns to madness." Her words echoed in my mind as I returned to the Johnson house, now a place of haunting memories and unanswered questions. That night, the wind howled outside like the cries of the damned, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The Yule Lads, it seemed, were not mere legends but active, vengeful entities with a thirst for retribution, determined to bring peace to the restless spirits and uncover the truth behind the Johnson family's fate. I sought the help of a local shaman, Rarin, known for his deep understanding of Icelandic folklore and spiritual practices. He agreed to assist me in navigating the thin veil between our world and the supernatural. Rarin arrived with an array of ritualistic tools, smoke sticks, protective amulets, and ancient runes. Together, we performed cleansing ceremonies around the Johnson home, chanting incantations meant to soothe the angered spirits. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air heavy with the presence of unseen entities. As midnight approached, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the house. The wind howled with an intensity that felt almost alive, and the shadows seemed to dance with a malevolent energy. Suddenly, the Yule lads made their presence known. The room grew cold, and the flickering candlelight cast grotesque shapes on the walls. The figurines we had discovered began to move, their tiny limbs twitching in unnatural ways. One by one, the Yule lads appeared before us, their eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Their once playful demeanor had been replaced by a haunting sadness and anger. Rarin stepped forward, his voice steady as he addressed the spirits. "We come in peace," he intoned, his words carrying a weight of authority and compassion. "Your anger and pain have not gone unnoticed. We seek to understand and bring peace to your restless souls." The lead Yule lad, a figure with a crooked smile and piercing eyes, stepped closer. "Our mischief was ignored, our presence taken for granted," he whispered, his voice echoing through the room like a mournful wind. "We sought recognition, but instead, we were forgotten." I felt a pang of guilt, realizing that our modern skepticism and disregard for ancient traditions had fueled their anger. "We are sorry," I replied, my voice barely audible. "We did not mean to disrespect you." The lead Yule lad's expression softened, the darkness in his eyes giving way to a glimmer of hope. "Acknowledge us, honor our existence, and let us find peace." With Rarin's guidance, we conducted a final ritual of acknowledgement and respect. We lit candles in each of the Yule lads' honor, offering them gifts that reflected their unique personalities and roles in the folklore. As the last candle was lit, a profound silence settled over the house. The Yule lads stood before us, their presence no longer menacing but serene. "Thank you," the lead Yule lad murmured, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "Now, we can rest." One by one, the Yule lads faded into the light, their spirits finally finding the peace they had long sought. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a warm, comforting sense of tranquility. The storm outside began to subside, the winds calming as if acknowledging the resolution of our ordeal. In the days that followed, the Johnson family's fate remained a mystery, but their home was no longer a place of haunting memories. The strange trinkets and carvings were removed, symbols of a dark chapter that had finally been laid to rest. The community, once skeptical of the ancient legends, now regarded the Yule lads with a newfound respect and reverence. Reflecting on the case, I realized that some stories hold truths beyond the realm of human understanding. The Yule lads, once thought to be mere folklore, were real entities with their own desires and grievances. Our ignorance and neglect had nearly cost us more than just the Johnson family. It had awakened a darkness that could have consumed us all. The murder of the Yule lads became a cautionary tale in Akureyri, a reminder to honor and respect the old ways and the spirits that lingered in the shadows. As for me, the experience left an indelible mark on my soul, a blend of fear and awe at the mysteries that lay beyond our comprehension. The winter of 1943 taught me that even in the most serene of places, darkness can lurk, waiting to be acknowledged and understood. And every Christmas thereafter, I make it a point to honor the Yule lads, ensuring that their stories are remembered and their spirits are respected. For in doing so, we not only prevent the darkness from rising again, but also embrace the rich tapestry of our cultural heritage, woven with threads of myth, legend, and the enduring human spirit. Story number 3. The Black Christmas Killer. The first snowfall of the season had blanketed Montreal in a serene, untouched layer of white, transforming the bustling city into a picturesque winter wonderland. It was December 1951, a time when Christmas brought not only joy and celebration, but also a sense of community that bound neighbors together. Little did we know, this year would mark the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt our lives forever. I'm Thomas Bennett, a 35-year-old accountant living in the modest yet charming home I shared with my wife, Eleanor, and our 2 children, Margaret and Peter. Our lives were simple, filled with the routines of daily work, school, and the occasional family gathering. Christmas was always a special time for us, a moment to cherish each other amidst the cold, dark days of winter. It was the week before Christmas when everything began to change. We had just moved into our new house on Rue Saint-Denis, eager to start fresh after years of renting in smaller apartments. The house was quaint, with a steep roof and large windows that let in ample light. Eleanor loved decorating, and together we transformed our home into a festive haven, complete with twinkling lights, a beautifully adorned Christmas tree, and stockings hung by the fireplace. On Christmas Eve, as the final touches were being made, we received our first mysterious gift. It was an elegantly wrapped box, adorned with a crimson ribbon and a single, black feather attached to the bow. No note accompanied it, and none of us recognized the handwriting. Curiosity piqued. Eleanor carefully unwrapped the package, revealing an intricate painting of a snowy forest under a blood-red moon. The details were uncanny, capturing the eerie stillness of a winter night with an unsettling precision. "We didn't order this," Eleanor remarked, her brow furrowing in confusion. I nodded in agreement, though a sense of unease began to settle in. As the evening progressed, more gifts arrived, each more bizarre than the last. Strange trinkets, antique-looking ornaments, and another painting depicting a desolate landscape shrouded in darkness. It felt as though someone was sending us a twisted version of Christmas cheer, each item more unsettling than the previous. Margaret, ever the inquisitive child, asked, "Who do you think is sending us these gifts?" "Daddy?" I could only shrug, trying to dismiss the growing tension. "I have no idea, sweetheart. Maybe it's just a prank." But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It wasn't until Christmas morning that the true horror revealed itself, as we gathered around the tree, exchanging gifts and sharing laughter. Eleanor reached for one of the mysterious boxes. She lifted the lid to reveal not another trinket or painting, but a horrifying sight, a severed hand, frozen in mid-motion, encased in a clear, icy resin. The room fell silent, the weight of the discovery sinking in. Margaret screamed, clutching her brother's arm, while Peter stood frozen, his eyes wide with terror. Eleanor dropped the box, her face draining of color as she realized the grim reality. "We need to call the police," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But before we could act, another knock echoed through the house, louder and more insistent this time. With trembling hands, I approached the door, peering through the peephole. There was no one there, only the swirling snow and the remnants of the storm outside. I hesitated, a chill running down my spine, before unlocking the door and cautiously stepping outside. The storm had intensified overnight, the wind howling like a living entity and the snow reducing visibility to mere feet. As I opened the door, the cold air whipped around me, carrying with it faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. I glanced around, heart pounding, but saw nothing out of the ordinary, no sign of a visitor, only the haunting stillness of the winter night. Turning back inside, I found Eleanor huddled by the fireplace, her eyes filled with fear. "Thomas, we need to do something. These gifts, they're not normal." Determined to protect my family, I decided to investigate further. The next day, I visited the local newspaper office, hoping to find any reports of strange occurrences or missing persons that might explain the sinister gifts. To my dismay, I discovered that our neighborhood had been the site of a gruesome murder a few years prior, an event that had left the community shaken and fearful. The victim was a man named Victor LeBlanc, a reclusive artist known for his macabre paintings and mysterious lifestyle. His body had been found dismembered in his studio, the cause of death ruled as a violent struggle. Despite extensive investigations, the case remained unsolved, leaving many questions unanswered and the community on edge. As I delved deeper into Victor's history, I uncovered disturbing details about his work. His paintings often depicted dark, foreboding scenes, filled with twisted figures and shadowy landscapes. It was as if he was trying to capture the very essence of fear and despair on canvas. Some even whispered that his art had a life of its own, influencing those who viewed it in inexplicable ways. The connection between Victor's tragic end and the sinister gifts we were receiving became undeniable. It was as if his spirit, or something far more malevolent, was reaching out from beyond the grave, using his art as a conduit to communicate its anguish and anger. Determined to put an end to the nightmare, I sought the help of a local medium, Madame Colette, renowned for her ability to communicate with spirits. She agreed to visit our home, bringing with her a sense of hope that we desperately needed. On the night of her visit, the house was cloaked in an eerie silence, the remnants of the storm still palpable in the air. Madame Colette entered our home, her presence both comforting and unsettling. She began to perform her ritual, chanting softly as she walked through each room, her hands moving gracefully as if conducting an unseen orchestra. As she approached the living room, she paused, her eyes fixed on the paintings that adorned our walls. "Victor's spirit is restless," she explained, her voice tinged with sorrow. "He's trying to reach out, to be heard. These gifts are his way of expressing his pain and seeking closure." I felt a shiver run down my spine as the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows dancing ominously around us. Madame Colette continued her incantation, focusing her energy on the dismembered hand that lay ominously beneath the tree. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if the very walls were echoing Victor's torment. Suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Replaced by a serene calm, Madame Colette opened her eyes, a look of relief washing over her. "His spirit has been acknowledged," she announced, "but there is still more work to be done. We must help him find peace." Determined to do whatever it took, Eleanor and I decided to honor Victor's memory by preserving his artwork and sharing his story with the community. We organized an exhibition in his old studio, hoping that by bringing his work to light, we could help dissipate the lingering darkness that had plagued our lives. The night of the exhibition, the studio was filled with curious onlookers and art enthusiasts, eager to witness the legacy of a man whose work had both captivated and terrified. As I walked through the gallery, surrounded by Victor's haunting creations, I felt a sense of closure begin to settle over me. It was as if by embracing his art and sharing his story, we were helping his spirit move on from the torment that had held him captive for so long. As the evening drew to a close, the final guest departed, leaving the studio bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. I stood alone amidst the paintings, the air still heavy with the echoes of the past. Suddenly, a gentle breeze swept through the room, causing the flames of the candles to flicker. I turned to see a figure standing at the far end of the gallery, a shadowy outline that seemed to shimmer in the candlelight. Victor, or what remained of him. His presence was no longer menacing, but sorrowful, a testament to the pain he had endured and the peace he had finally found. He approached me slowly, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of gratitude and relief. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Now I can rest." With those final words, his figure began to dissolve, fading into the soft glow of the candles until he was nothing more than a memory, a lingering echo of a tragic past. In the days that followed, the haunting ceased entirely, the sinister gifts stopped arriving, and our home returned to its peaceful state. The community rallied around Victor's memory, ensuring that his story would never be forgotten and that his legacy would live on through his art. But the experience left an indelible mark on our family. We learned that sometimes, the past has a way of reaching out, seeking understanding and closure, and in helping others find peace. We too found a deeper sense of connection and purpose. As I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the memories of that dark season, I am reminded of the thin veil that separates our world from the next. The Black Christmas Killer may have been a shadow from the past, but his story serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring power of love, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of peace amidst the darkness.